Hello everyone, God bless you. I hope you are having an amazing Sunday. It's a beautiful day out. We're starting to come out of summer and it's cooling off a bit. So I'm going to get right to it, and I'm going to talk about, on the same vein as my previous videos, from my channel, Tiger Wolf Travels. My channel is about dangerous travel to misunderstood places, connecting with other cultures, meeting people all over the world and building a community, and then also looking at things like Amy Bradley and the subject I'm going to talk about. Try to help families, help people throughout the world in foreign waters, foreign countries, in addition to animal rescue, animal sanctuary, reptile rescue. I'm the alligator godfather, and I mean that with love. I want to also misunderstood animals that we need to love and protect, but not pets. So to give you a background, so please like this video, subscribe to Tiger Wolf Travels. And I thank everyone who has subscribed, everyone who's watched, and everyone who comments, everyone who likes or dislikes my videos. I love the interaction, because ultimately we can help families, we can help animals, we can help the world, and not in a cliche way to, like, I want to go to Somalia next, Mogadishu. Show everyone there's wonderful people there. It's an incredible place. Black Hawk Down was a movie that showed what happened, and thank every service member, thank everyone who served. But that doesn't just make up Somalia. It's an amazing place. It's with amazing people who unfortunately got caught up in a bad regime, but it's getting better. So I want to just give everyone an idea what my channel is about. Okay, I'm going to talk about, get right down to it, Amy Lynn Bradley and the Lonigans from Open Water. Kind of there is a connection, a nexus between it, if I may. Just to give you a quick background, you're probably familiar with Amy Lynn Bradley, the Netflix documentary, Missing from the Cruise Ship. My previous videos, there's a lot of media and information online about her. She went missing from a cruise ship in April of 1998. Her family's been looking for her. There's many theories: fell overboard, trafficked, kidnapped, possibly unalived, off the ship. Happened near Curacao, one of the ABC islands in the near the South Caribbean. So that's going to be part of this video. I think you guys will love this, and I can't wait for the dialogue. There is a nexus with the Lonigans. Now, if you're familiar with the Lonigans, they were a couple that the movie, one of the top independent films, is based on, Open Water. This was a movie that came out in the early 2000s about a couple who they were divers, and they went scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef in Queensland, Australia. So, and what happened with them, if you don't know the story, the movie's fantastic. It's kind of like a Blair Witch Project in the ocean, and it is based on a true story. I mean, there's some Hollywood added in there, but they went in January 25th in 1998, ironically the same year as Amy Lynn Bradley going missing, and both of these have a huge amount of attention, huge amount of interest. They went on a dive boat to the Great Barrier Reef. They boarded the boat. They had their equipment. There was, now off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly how many people. So they get on the boat. When you go to dive, if you're not a diver, and if you are a diver, you know, but if you go to dive, you book these trips. And back then in 1998, you didn't do it online like everything now. So it was a little bit more paper. It was a lot more paper based. You book the trip, and then you meet usually 5-6 a.m. in the morning at near where the boat is. They either drive you to the boat, they check everybody in, make sure they have all the equipment. And these are very popular trips, so they have them going 1 or 2 or 3 all day. So keep that in mind. Lonigans go out with this group. They go out to dive. They are a married couple, and they get to the dive area near the reef. They go diving. So what happened is that there was a man on the boat who had some equipment, didn't bring equipment, forgot equipment, and there was some divers who came back from their dive. Forgive me for that. That is a Hell's Angels going through. I'm in New Mexico, so they're going through this highway. So there's always, if you're familiar with the Southwest or not, it's pretty interesting. I'd love to film that for you. There's a whole line of them in a procession. I don't know why. But anyway, excuse me for that interruption. So basically what happened was this guy who managed to find 2 people come up from diving, and he said, hey, look, can I borrow your equipment? And you're not, and rules of the dive ship, you can't dive alone. Do you mind if one of you come down with me? So they go down to dive. They get the diving out of the way as the day goes on. Lonigans are still in the water. The man, and it was a woman and she was kind enough to go diving with him. They come up, so day's over diving. They're in the ocean, the boat. The boat owner, or the people who work for the diving company take a head count, and they're like, we have 30, we're good. Not realizing the Lonigans were still in the water because they mistakenly double counted this man and the woman due to the equipment issue. And the kindness of the woman to go to, and I'm not going to say their names on this because it's not relevant, it's only the Lonigans. So she was kind enough to go down with this guy. So they came up as a pair. Boat goes back to the dock. Everybody gets off. Lonigans are still in the water. These people are still in the water. And that area of Australia, and there's a lot of conjecture of the shark situation there. There are sharks there. There are great white sharks, tiger sharks, and bull sharks. Now, it's not a feeding frenzy like other parts of Australia that people seem to think. So I just want to point that out. But that doesn't eliminate that they were not eaten by sharks. So 2 days later, dive company, and this isn't about demonizing anybody, the dive company or anything. This is about the nexus, the relationship, connection with Lynn Bradley. The dive company realizes, and to their horror, that when the driver from the hotel goes to pick up the Lonigans, they're not there. And this guy, bless his heart, went everywhere looking for them and was confused. 2 days later, now the Lonigans had been in the ocean in a wetsuit. Nobody knew. And then the dive company, they panic. The 27th, they go looking for them. They contact the Coast Guard and the Australian Search and Rescue, and they don't find them. If you're familiar with that area or not, that is such a vast, massive swath of sea. I mean, you're 2 people who are floating without life jackets in black wetsuits. And they were still alive. So they don't find them, and the dive company gets sued. And then months later, they find some wetsuits and dive equipment washes up. It matches what a woman would wear because of the size. They assume that's the wife, and then some other equipment washes up. So there's conjecture about the shark. They were eaten by sharks. So let's clear that up. Their bodies were eaten completely. No bones have washed up, and that's what wash up. Nothing, no skulls, no jaws, no ribs, no pelvises, nothing. So I'm going to tie that into, and bless their souls, that's their poor families. It's awful. It's fascinating in the way that of what happens to humans. And it also does speak to something that I've mentioned before with dive company, with the cruise ship, and when you're out of the U.S. Believe me, the U.S. has plenty of issues, but just because, and it's Australia, which is similar to the U.S. And same with Amy Lynn Bradley on a cruise ship. When you're not in the U.S. or you're in a remote area, you are, and I'm not talking about like going to Somalia. Don't go there. I know what I'm doing. That's not for beginners. Don't go there until you've traveled. There's fascinating places to go, but so basically you're at the mercy of a situation like this dive company. Now that was 98. Same thing with Amy Lynn Bradley. Could that happen now? Yes, it could very easily happen now. In fact, it could happen worse now because of people not paying attention with phones and computer glitches. And now there's so much technology, they can pile on, diving trips, dolphin seeing trips, zip line, whatever. And you could, I don't want to scare people and say you're going to have an open water experience like the movie, like what happened to the Lonigans, but just to keep in mind, it can happen. So here's the nexus, and here's the situation. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to say it again. The Lonigans were eaten by sharks. They're dismissing that because the wetsuits were not shredded, and a shark expert, and I give him respect, came out and said there's very little shark activity in this area near the Great Barrier Reef where people dive. Let me shut that down. Yes, he's correct. The Lonigans drifted, first of all, why they didn't find them, and also why the day of the dive boat was so negligent and nobody said, hey, there's like 2 other people out, because they drifted by the current so far away, and it wasn't anyone's fault, it just happened. And it speaks to dive companies should be responsible because you pay a lot of money for that. And they drifted far away. So we're not exactly sure how long the Lonigans survived in water. You had the wife and the husband together, wetsuit, they have some buoyancy, they have some of their diving buoyancy devices, they have their flippers. We don't know how long they live, but there's some things here, they could have even made it 3-4 days. But some things, hypothermia, even with the wetsuit, that's going to start to kick in, and it's going to depend on your metabolism, size, height, weight, age, health. They were pretty fit, they were younger, and it's also going to depend on, and this is what did it in for, what was a cause for Amy Lynn Bradley, dehydration in any ocean area. Amy Lynn Bradley, bless her heart, had gone out to Aruba, as we all know, a partially desert island, drinking, having fun. Everyone does it, not drinking enough water. She was dehydrated. But you're not dehydrated like you're hiking through Death Valley. You're just not drinking a lot of water, like I'm about to do now. This is flavored water with electrolytes. And that's just, I'm very into fitness and health. Let me give you guys, my subscribers and future subscribers and everyone, we all need to drink a lot of water. That's pushed on everyone. But electrolytes, you need electrolytes, because the problem with pounding water is you're urinating out electrolytes. So add in some electrolyte. That's what the orange color is. And I wish if I worked, I'm not trying to hawk anything, but if I did sell something, I would sell electrolytes, like a little packet put in here. That's why you feel tired, and then we're pounding coffee and energy drinks and pre-workout and everything else, because it's your electrolyte starved. And here's just a side note, and I hope I can help people with this. You know why you find yourself days, especially when it's really cold or really hot, you're just eating and eating and eating. There's two things. You're electrolyte deprived in the summer, and in the winter you can be electrolyte deprived, but you're also mineral deprived. So your body is trying to have you eat, not so much out of hunger or you're starving, it's trying to find those minerals. No matter what, it just wants you, it's your brain wants to protect itself, but you know what, your mind is not your friend, but it's trying to keep itself alive, so it's thinking it needs minerals. So a good multi-mineral as well. And I don't sell anything. If you want to DM me, I'm more than happy to recommend what I use. I learned that the hard way, and it makes a world of difference. It's like a mood booster, because a lot of us are magnesium deprived and then calcium deprived. But you can be taking, a lot of women, a lot of ladies need to take calcium, and they'll take a calcium magnesium supplement, or men will take too much zinc. And when minerals they all need to be balanced. So forgive me, I went off on a tangent, but I hope that helps somebody. And that's what leads to dehydration. So that, going back to the Lonigans, they were 3 or 4 days, probably dehydration, the sun, they were sunburnt, hypothermia, the shock of the situation, many things. So probably possibly what happened with the Lonigans, and this is that there is something where when you are in freezing temperatures, you begin to remove your clothing. It sounds strange, but the body thinks it's having hyperthermia and will begin taking clothing off. And a lot of the times when in very cold, 0 below temperatures, they'll find someone who's unalive. They'll be unalive, because paradoxical undressing is what it's called. And it's paradoxical because why would you take off your clothes? But the body is wanting you to remove clothing because of the erratic temperature change in the cold. And that might have happened to the Lonigans. They were removing the wetsuit because they were cognitively, and they're not functioning well. Their mental alertness was gone. So that's where the sharks got them and ate them whole. And that goes to Amy Lynn Bradley. I know Mr. Mentor, the gentleman who was the head of law enforcement in Curacao, very likable guy in the documentary, and bless his heart, he did his best to find Amy. He really got involved in this case. He deserves his own documentary because he seems like a fascinating guy. If just on a side note, because it'd be very interesting to see these small islands, Curacao, which generally has a good reputation of how law enforcement, search and rescue, the Coast Guard works. So he said he grew up there. Even if the sharks eat you, they're not going to eat you whole. And I, as I pointed out, bless his heart, but that's incorrect. He's not a shark expert, he's not an ocean expert, and he's not a current expert. So that's very incorrect. There's a lot of misinformation that gets into the drama of the Lonigans as well, and that could be tied to Amy Lynn Bradley. They're very odd. It's like a Bermuda Triangle singularity. Amy Lynn Bradley, 92%, and I stick with that, fell off the ship. And whether she was going to vomit, aspirate, and she tried to stand on a table, I am leaning more towards, I don't even think she was going to do that. I think she might have just not felt well. And I think what she did is she got on that table, which the FBI verified, and just leaned and fell. There's a great show called, in YouTube, this is the name of the show, so please, it's cruise ship K, and then it has two L's, ERS. We have to be careful using that word. It's an excellent show. It recreates people being unalived on cruise ships, true stories. And they do show people falling overboard. And it's interesting how they recreated, because there's a lot of that. There's 3 seasons of this. I didn't know that cruise ships have things going on left and right. But when you see someone fall overboard, it's so fast, so quick, that in the ship, the way, especially the older ships from the 90s would move, the inertia is going to pull someone under. So, like the Lonigans, the whole reason Amy Lynn Bradley, nothing's washed up, but I'm going to go into that, is because she was completely eaten by sharks. Completely. Just like the Lonigans. There has been nothing else that washed up about the Amy Lynn Bradley and about the Lonigans. And sharks will digest all people when they eat someone. Sometimes they won't, but it just depends on the situation for the shark. But nothing is washed up, except with Amy Lynn Bradley. There was a jawbone that washed up on Curacao, and it was tested by the Natalie Holloway family. It wasn't her, but it was a female. And I work in this world. I don't want to go into what I do. You can DM me. I want to be covert about that. That's my career. But I know DNA, I know bones, I know how exactly that works. It's very easy to test when you trying to ID somebody. The gold standard of IDing an unalive person, if there's you can't do it with fingerprints, and sometimes fingerprints, body's decomposed, or there's no hands, so that's out of the question. Or they don't have. Sometimes they might have tattoos or something. You can try, but really the gold standard is dental imaging, so it's your teeth, because that's every human being, and so if you don't have teeth, which we don't have, then the next step, the silver standard, is using DNA, and it's a DNA sample of bones. And that can take a while, but that's another way as well. But the Bradley family, and no judgment here, decided not to go that route. Now the Lonigan family is a different matter. And the Lonigans have a mausoleum in Louisiana. It's quite interesting. There is a YouTube channel called Fascinating Graveyards. I don't know this gentleman. He's wonderful, positive, and he goes to grave sites of famous people and things. And he went to the Lonigan site. Check it out. I don't know him. I'd love to get to know him. I think graveyards can be fascinating, but he gives a background as well. And with both Amy Lynn Bradley and the Lonigans, there's something very interesting. Apparently, the Lonigans had been keeping a very detailed journal they found. Apparently, we have not read this journal. When I say we're going off of conjecture. So, this journal is very interesting. This journal, they talk about the Lonigan couple, about how they lived a great life, they lived a life, and it would be okay if that life ceased to be lived anymore. And in detail, that's what the claim is. There was also very interesting but bizarre, interesting though, passage from the wife about she felt that they were becoming too intertwined, intermeshed. So let me explain that in a psychological sense, in layman's terms. That translates to something much deeper going on, some mental health issues. On the surface, it's what it sounds like is that the relationship was them dominated their life. There was no social outlet. They had blocked out their families. They had become where they were, it was novel, stereotypical codependency at a very toxic, unhealthy level, a dysfunctional level. So, now what does that all mean in the scheme of this video? People like to say, and it denigrates these poor people, that the whole situation of how they became unalived in the ocean was because it was intentional. And it also goes to Lynn Bradley that the going overboard had some intentionality behind it because of some of her choices in life, because of her sexuality, which in both cases, neither Amy or the Lonigans their lives were not unalived due to that. And I'm going to get to the hypothesis and really what the truth is. Both of them were victims to shark attacks. When Amy went overboard because she wasn't feeling well, and again, I don't think she was going to throw up, because even if she was cognitively delirious, she was so nice and so thoughtful. I think even in her mind she might have thought, and she could have. It's not a huge detail, but I think it makes it worse, because if you're going to throw up, you're going to hold on to the rail, stick your head over, because you want to get it out of you. I mean, we've all been there in the past. Some of us may still be there. No judgment. But she may have just stood up to get the wind in her face. She wasn't asleep very long, only a couple hours, or she may have not even been sleeping, and that's worse. I mean, what's interesting is even Bradley, he's like, we have to get up early. He's getting a couple hours of sleep. You feel awful. And they didn't have energy drinks back then. They weren't as caffeine dependent. When I say they, people in general in the U.S. So she leaned over and fell. When she fell in, and again, I know I'm not trying to sound arrogant, and you can DM me, ask me what I do. I have a very strong understanding of what is when people, up to the point of unaliving, and then when they're unalived in different environments. She was in the water, and again, she fell in. She fell and went 10, 20, 30 feet, maybe more, just because of physics. She probably got pulled maybe under or near the boat, and she drowned. And then the decomposition begins, and then what happens in salt water. I mean, salt water will preserve some things for a little longer than fresh water, but immediately, and again, it's dependent on age, health, and size, and what's in the body. But the Caribbean, that area that has sharks, and other marine life as well. There's other fish. It's not just sharks. We don't know how long, but the sharks began to take their toll. They began feeding. They began tearing her apart, unfortunately. And then parts of her, they were pretty much all digested. Now there may be some, because bone obviously lasts a long time. There may be some bone somewhere at the bottom of the ocean. We don't possibly, but other than that jawbone, which I would bet my house is her, if it's a Caucasian female on the same island, and that would make a lot of sense, because usually let me tell you this, when missing people, when something's found for them, when it comes to the skeleton, the head neck up, typically in a lot of situations, will be found first. I don't mean a full skull, but a mandible, part of the skull. So, not always. Sometimes it's a femur. It could be tibia, maybe a humerus. You really don't see the hands and feet a lot. With people, you don't see the spine. I know you're hiking out in the desert and you'll see the spine of a bovine or some farm animal. Same with the Lonigans, except the difference is the Lonigans are in a much deeper, much wider, bigger area of the Great Barrier Reef. Australia, the Indian Ocean, you have all sorts of different currents coming together. So it would be shocking if anything, any types of bones or anything washed up. There's all sorts of marine life. There's all sorts of things. So I would have doubted anything other than those wetsuits would have washed up, because animals aren't going to eat that. Nothing's going to eat that. I'll tell you something really interesting before I end this video that I hope everyone enjoys. I was in South Florida at 10 o'clock at night. I'll show you the picture. And this huge bull alligator, he must have been 11, 12 feet. And it was dark. And I was just relaxing in the swamp, standing over the wall. It was outside the Everglades. And he swam up to me in this pond. And I had saw him earlier, and he had been trying to get fish from these people fishing. And he looked like a sea monster. But what was so fascinating, as soon as everyone left and he saw me standing there, I went to the wall as soon as everyone left. It was just a coincidence. It was about a 3-foot wall. And he swims directly towards me. His huge head, which I got beautiful pictures of, and he just stayed there. I was there for 2 hours. And we see these images of crocodiles jumping out of the water. Typically, alligators won't do that. Now, he wasn't coming up to shake my hand. But he certainly was. It may have been food, but he never opened his mouth. And so, I know alligators and crocodiles, especially alligators, much more. It was probably a curiosity thing, and it may have been because he wasn't looking to feed, but he may have not. But he did something that was really interesting, and I wanted to. This ties into. It seems like an odd thing to get into, but it sort of ties into the wetsuits, Amy's clothing, her cigarettes, whatever she had on. She may have had a belt. There was the guys who were fishing left a fishing lure that was on the bank, and it was a plastic fish, a minnow with, in the mouth of the minnow you have that plastic for fish to bite on. It's about half an inch, and then there was a hook here, a 4-hook here, and a hook in the back. It was probably about 3-4 inches long. And the alligator was there. He wasn't moving, but the force of him after about 20-30 minutes caused this lure to go in the water. And I heard this incredible, like a book slamming, and he chomped on it. And I wish I would have filmed it. It was just so interesting to watch. And I remember thinking, poor guy's going to cut up his mouth. And then I thought, no, will he swallow it whole? Do they not care? And this is where some ignorance with sharks and alligators and those types of animals come in, marine animals. And he opened his mouth and spit it out. He didn't want it. He didn't. And then he slammed his mouth down again, almost an annoyance. And that's something, and I learned from that. And sharks do that, and there's other marine animals that do that. They're not goats. They're not going to eat everything. They're not going to eat wetsuits. They're not going to eat clothing. There's nothing they don't want. They're just going to, in the way, and I don't think, someone correct me, they're going to spit it out. I don't think, maybe they do spit. I'm not a biologist. And that's where Amy and the Lonigans were eaten, but the Lonigans had their wetsuit wash up, and I don't think that there was no interaction between the shark and the wetsuit, but the bodies were eaten. Amy was eaten, and the clothing just disintegrated. It doesn't take long for that stuff to disintegrate. So this is a video to give you more insight into what happened. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Please like this video. Please subscribe. Please comment. Please completely disagree with me if you do. Please have dialogue. Hopefully we can help the Bradley family and anyone else, because, folks, I'm also involved in Missing 411, and I don't know if you all know what that is, but that's people going missing in state national parks. And there's no criminal, no animal predation, no falls, no anything. They just go missing. And what sets it apart, search and rescue doesn't find them, cadaver dogs don't find them. These people vanish, metaphorically. And the amount of, in these cases as well, this vanishing, you have so many it's one thing to lose someone and then find them, but they're not getting closure. And maybe we can help not just the Bradleys, but there's many others to get closure because of dialogue, and we try to open up the avenues. So thank you for watching. Everyone have a wonderful day.